Hello and welcome to the second part of the 300th video celebrations trilogy, and in this part I'm going to be looking at my top 10 classic Doctor Who stories. This is an updated version because I think I've done about possibly 2 of these. I remember doing my first one, which is when I didn't have that many classic DVDs or classic stories, but over the years obviously I've managed to collect quite a few, and therefore my list has changed quite a bit. So yeah, this is my top 10 classic Doctor Who stories as part of my 300th video celebrations. So let's begin with number 10. I think this will always be a number 10 spot because it's a story that I've always had a bit of a soft spot for. It's always been a story that I've liked, and it is the Aztecs. I am very fond of the story, as some of you might know. It was at one point my favourite story of all time, but that's before I started looking at stories like, well, I'll go into the stories that I now think are as good as this, but I think just slightly better. So yeah, the reason why the Aztecs is at number 10 is because, not just because it's signed by William Russell, it's just a story that I wanted him to sign because I didn't have very many William Hartnell stories at that time. I still don't have very many William Hartnell stories at the moment, but I have seen a few others and I do like those as well. But I just love the supporting cast, the acting, the costumes, the storytelling. The script is fantastic in this. It's just a really fun, quick story to watch. It's a 4-part story. I really enjoyed it. The DVD itself is one of my favourite DVDs of my collection. It's got such brilliant special features, like the Doctor Forever, where it looks at the toys that were released in the Doctor Who merchandise. The toys that were released, and I think just the story itself, written by John Le Carrotti, I just think he did a fantastic job of this. I can't remember what other stories he's written. I'll probably search them up later on the internet or something, but yeah, this is one of the stories where I can just pretty much look back and just say to myself, yes, that was a fantastic story. I could probably watch this twice if I really wanted, but I probably won't ever do that because I don't usually do those things. But if I were to ever do a marathon, even though I haven't seen or heard all of the William Hartnell stories, I think this will probably be the one that I'll be most looking forward to because it's just a great story. Great cliffhangers, although there is a bit of an awkward cliffhanger at the end of episode 1. Where the camera just stares at the Mad Butcher's face for a bit too long, and it's a bit, can you get out my face, please? So yeah, that's my only problem with it. But overall, it's a fantastic story. I highly recommend you check it out, and make sure you buy the special edition because there are much better special features. Plus, it also contains Galaxy 4, so that's another good reason to get it. At number 9 is a Jon Pertwee story. He's my favourite Doctor, and it is Planet of the Daleks. The reason why I love this story a lot is because I know, well, Jon Pertwee isn't massively fond of the Daleks, but he never really said he didn't like working with them, which was quite surprising. But yeah, great. I love the set design in this. It's just one of those stories where I can sort of watch it on a Sunday and sort of lighten your mood. Because Sundays don't really make you feel any better, I don't think. And if you can just watch this on a Sunday and it'll just cheer you up, or if you're feeling miserable, this will definitely help the misery run away, as it were. I hope that was a decent metaphor, but never mind. Yeah, I really like the Daleks in the story. I love the Supreme Dalek with gold and purple ear lights. I think he looks just really cool. And Yeah, wow, it's a 6-part story, so it is a bit long. Actually, I think it might be 4 parts. I think it is 6 parts though. I'm pretty sure it's 6 parts. Yeah, it's episode. Well, it's 6 parts. So, yeah, I think this is better than. I mean, if you were to get the Dalek War box set, it's probably best just to get it for Planet of the Daleks. I mean, Frontier in Space is a very good story, but this is my favourite in the box set, and it's one of my favourite Dalek stories. I mean, the cliffhanger at the end of episode 6 of Frontier in Space is fantastic, but I think that story is overshadowed by this, because I just love every single minute of Planet of the Daleks. I really like the episode 1 cliffhanger of this. I think it's when they reveal that the Daleks are using invisibility from the creatures that are habited on the planet that Daleks are currently overtaking, and the Doctor uses like a spray paint to reveal what turns out to be a Dalek. And I think that's just a fantastic cliffhanger. I really love Planet of the Daleks. It's one of my favourite Dalek stories as well. But, that's just me. I've always really liked the story, to be honest. For some reason it wasn't in my top 10 the first time round, or that might have been because I might not have, got this DVD at that point. But hey ho, it's still a great story, and I highly recommend you watch this, especially on a Sunday. Forget any other day of the week, just watch it on a Sunday, because it's a really nice story to watch. So, at number 8, we have a Tom Baker story, and it is The Talons of Wang Chiang. Now, I can see why people might think this is an overrated story, because I suppose in a way it is, because a lot of people do really like this story. It's a great story. It's a very, very good story. You can probably watch it all in one go. I think it's 4 parts. Let's just have a quick look in here. See, I haven't watched these stories in a long time, but I just know they are fantastic. Yeah, it's a 6-part story, but it's one of these stories where you can just watch it in one go and not get bored. I think this was the second classic story that I showed Joe, and he really liked it, so I'm sure if he liked it, you'll like it as well. So, if you haven't seen the story, it's one of the stories that I strongly recommend, because it's part of the Revisitations 1 box set. It's 3 discs, so that's quite a good thing as well. And the story, I've always liked the story. Ever since I watched it, I sort of clapped and applauded the story, because I just think it's a masterpiece. Sorry about that. I just had a little freeze. I just had a little moment there. But as I was saying, what was his name? Robert Holmes has only written like a couple of bad stories, which apparently I think they were the Crotons and the Space Pirates are meant to be his only bad stories. And I suppose the Two Doctors, in a way, I like that story, but I think there are quite a few people who say it's not the best of Sontaran stories, but that's the way it is. But I think this is one of Robert Holmes' best stories. He's a brilliant writer. Highly recommend you watch some of his stories if you haven't. There are so many stories that he's written. There is another one that is actually in my list. Just check out some of the stories written by Robert Holmes. That's all I'm saying, really, because they are pretty much some of the best stories that Doctor Who has ever done, and they're really worth watching and really well worth your money. So, yeah, another reason to get the stories, to see how writers like Robert Holmes compared to writers like David Whittaker or other writers. I don't know. Depending who's your favourite writer, it's quite good to compare them and see which stories are better. So, at number 7, we have another Robert Holmes story, and that is The Deadly Assassin. This is one I bought fairly recently. It's my latest addition to my Doctor Who classic DVD line. And yes, another great story. The cliffhangers are fantastic. I love Peter Pratt's master. I think he plays it brilliantly, and the costume design is, well, quite terrifying. And I think my favourite moments in Doctor Who ever are in this story where Tom Baker's leg is trapped to a railway line, and there's a fast steam train approaching, and it sort of ends there. And it's quite a violent story, this, especially when Tom Baker and Bernard Horsfall, who has played quite a number of parts in the story. He played the Time Lord. He played a clown. He played a pilot. He played all sorts. Where they're fighting in a swamp, and Tom Baker sort of nearly drowns, or the Doctor nearly drowns, and that's quite a violent scene. And I think Mary Whitehouse did complain about some of the violence that was in the story. But that's why I love the story, because it's very, very, very violent. Not saying I'm violent. I've never been very violent, to be honest. But the story is filled with violence, and it's a great, entertaining watch. Fantastic cliffhangers, brilliant set design, brilliant script, brilliant everything. I think Tom Baker gives his best performance in this. Tom Baker's brilliant in every story that he's in, apart from his last season where he looked as though he didn't really want to be there. But that's just the way he was. So the Deadly Assassin, I think, is regarded by a lot of fans as being one of the best Doctor Who stories. I'm not sure why it's taken me so long to actually get the story, but if you ever see this in the shops, definitely get it, because it's well worth your money. So at number 6, we have a Patrick Troughton story. Quite a few Troughton stories in this. There's about 2 others in my list, whereas this one is sort of near the bottom of the list, but that's not to say it's bad, because it's in my top 10. And it is The Seeds of Death, as you can see. Another fantastic story. Features the Ice Warriors. This is my favourite Ice Warrior story. Patrick Troughton, well, he's excellent in the story, as well as every other stories. He's just brilliant, and I think I prefer this story to the Ice Warriors, because I don't know why. I mean, I like most of the Ice Warriors stories, but this is my favourite because I watched this in one go, and I just sort of thought, when I finished watching it, I sort of thought, wow, that went by really quick. And it does go by really, really quickly. And I think the black and white really does work well in Ice Warrior stories. I'm not too keen on the Jon Pertwee ones, but even though they are very, very good, I think I prefer the Patrick Troughton stories with the Ice Warriors. But yeah, it's such a fantastic story. It's part of the Revisitations 2 box sets, or if you're in the US, I think it just comes separately. But yeah, great story. This is the best part about the Revisitations 2 box set, in my view, because I'm not too fond of that box set. I quite like the stories in it, but I think it's just the weakest Revisitations set. But yeah, great story. Really, really enjoyed it. Fantastic Patrick Troughton story. It's 6 parts, but don't let that put you off buying it, because just buy the story, take a look at it, see how you feel towards the end of episode 4. If you can't manage it, then of course that's completely up to you if you want to switch off the story and watch or finish it another day. But I managed to watch it in one go. The special features are quite good. I like the making of documentary. But yeah, buy the Revisitations 2 box set just to get the story, I think, because The Seeds of Death is fantastic. So we have 5 stories left. 5 stories. So in 5th place we have a Sylvester McCoy story, and it is from Remembrance of the Daleks. Another story considered to be, I think, fairly overrated. But I've always loved this story. This is another story that contains one of my favourite scenes from Doctor Who, and it is the scene in the cafe where the Doctor is talking to the chap behind the bar, well, chap behind the till, and he's talking about sugar, and it's just a great scene. I'm not sure why. I just a lot of people seem to really appreciate this story, and they have said this does make a better 25th anniversary story, and they are right. Silver Nemesis, as much as I enjoyed it, it's not that good as a story. It's still enjoyable, but just no, it doesn't make a good anniversary story. And I think the budget in this story must have been absolutely ridiculously big, because the scene with the spacecraft or the mothership was just brilliant. The way they landed it on the school playground was brilliant, and there are a few references to the past with the French Revolution book that Ace holds, which they tried to reenact the scene where Susan is looking at the same book, and that's quite a nice touch as well. Sylvester McCoy is brilliant, Terry Molloy is brilliant, Sophie Aldred is brilliant, Simon Williams is brilliant. The cast in general and the characters are just brilliant. I really love the story, and Ben Aranovich is one of my favourite writers, but even though he hasn't written that many Doctor Who stories, I've read his I read the Target novelisation of this book, and it's very similar, and it's still as enjoyable as the television serial. So if I were you, I would buy this story if you haven't got it, and read the book itself, because it's part of the 50th anniversary Doctors collection, so it will probably cost you about £5 or £7 depending where you get it from. But yeah, just watch that story, because it's it's definitely not a disappointment. So 4 stories left, and in 4th place we have Terror of the Zygons. This has been rated very, very highly by fans. It's just a brilliant story. It is written by the brilliant Robert Banks Stewart, and he has he has created what is such an entertaining story. The Zygons are one of my favourite villains, if not my favourite, alongside the Daleks. I love the design. I know a lot of people didn't really like the design the 50th anniversary gave them, but I quite liked it, to be honest. But no, this is a definitely better Zygon story than what we saw in the 50th, although that wasn't really Zygon, Zygon based, even though the Zygons did have like a little sub story. But yeah, very, very good story. I really enjoyed it. 4 parts, so it's pretty quick. The cliffhangers, I think my favourite cliffhanger is episode 1, because where Sarah gets attacked by a Zygon. That's just a fantastic cliffhanger. One of my favourites in Doctor Who. Just simple, but it is quite terrifying, that cliffhanger. The way it was directed and the way it was produced, just fantastic. This story is, without a doubt, a 10 out of 10. I'm sure a lot of Doctor Who fans probably have this. It was annoying how this was one of the last few stories to be released. I was sort of wondering, when the hell is that story going to actually be released? And it was released September last year, I think. Sometime then, I believe. But yeah, it was taken so bloody long to get released. It was unbelievable. I mean, the cover is fantastic. I think it was created by Babel Colour, or Mark Humphreys, I think his name is. But yeah, if you haven't got the story in your collection, then I'm not sure why it's not in your collection, because it should be in your collection, and it's sort of one of the essentials for a Doctor Who fan, really. If you haven't watched it, it's probably best you go out and buy the story, because well, it's just a really entertaining story. And if you want to see more of the Zygons, then yeah, what a great way to get the story and just to see more action from the Zygons. In third place is a Patrick Troughton story, and it is the Abominable Snowman. Now, a lot of you might know or may know that I am a huge fan of Victoria Waterfield, and a lot of her stories I really, really adore. But as a Yeti story, I think this is my favourite, because now I think this story is, unfortunately overshadowed by the Web of Fear, because obviously it's the only Yeti story that has been found, apart from episode 3, and it's just a shame that this story hasn't been found, or hopefully it will get found at some point. We have episode 2, which I'm grateful, and that's just brilliant to see all the location footage that was used in the story, and I can really imagine the story in my head. But it's a 6-part story, but I can listen to it all the way through without a problem. I love the Great Intelligence. I love the voice. The guy who played the Great Intelligence, I think he's got such a fantastic voice, and there are great cliffhangers in this story, especially in episode 1, and I think all the other cliffhangers themselves are just fantastic, and they just make the story more enjoyable. And the cast, well, the actors or supporting cast were very, very strong and very, very good. I really liked Travers in the story, who appears in the Web of Fear, or an older version of Travers, I should say, and he is in fact played by Victoria Waterfield's, or Deborah Watling's father, which is a nice sort of touch. And so yeah, The Abominable Snowman is one of my favourite stories, and I can listen to it in one go without a problem, because it's just one of those stories. So I'm going to do like a little jump cut, because there's not long left, so 1 second, go! Okay, so in second place is another Jon Pertwee story, and it is Inferno. Yes, Inferno. Wow, what a brilliant story this is. It's just a fantastic story. I think the whole idea of having a parallel universe story is just a really good story. I know I'm not too fond of the new series parallel stories, but I think this is the best one there is. But I'm just wondering what to say about the story, because it's so brilliant. There are so many things I could pick out, but I'm just trying to work out some of the things that I could say first. Well, I suppose the actors are brilliant, because they are playing sort of 3. Some of them are playing 3 roles, because they're playing their normal selves, the parallel selves, and of course the creatures when they get turned into one. I love the volcano scenes that are shown at the beginning of each episode. I really like that touch, because it just resembles the Inferno, or the fieriness of the story. It's a 7-part story, as many of the 7-part stories were 7 parts in Series 7. And one of my favourite seasons is, in fact, Season 7, because you've got great stories in there. My least favourite is Doctor Who and the Silurians. I'm not saying it's a bad story, I think it dragged a little bit too much for my liking. But you've got other stories in that season, like Spearhead from Space. You've got, let's think, The Ambassadors of Death, Inferno, and Doctor Who and the Silurians. So, it's a great season. I've got all those stories, and I think Inferno is my favourite. Spearhead from Space is a great story if you haven't watched that, but Inferno, I think, is the best of the best, because it's just brilliant. There are very good scenes when Jon Pertwee is being attacked by the soldiers, and one of the soldiers gets thrown off John Pertwee's car, and I think that the actor who played that soldier broke his leg or something when he got thrown off. Or no, actually, when one of the soldiers dived out of the way when John Pertwee nearly ran one of the soldiers over. I think the edge of the car might have hit the actor's leg, or the person who played the soldier. The actor might have got his leg injured because of the stunts that they were doing were a bit dangerous. And another great moment in the story is where we are sort of meant to believe that John Pertwee has fallen from this basin or whatever, this huge cylinder that's incredibly high. We're meant to believe that John Pertwee's doctor had fallen from that, but it was in fact one of the zombie-like creatures. So that made a great cliffhanger. I think that was a cliffhanger, I can't remember. But yeah, just a great story, really entertaining. The first half is pure gold. Second half, that's just another thing to look forward to. So if you haven't bought the special edition of Inferno, then you are missing out, because even though the original edition of this is quite good, but there are a few special, there are better special features. But one of the things that I'm a bit annoyed about is that they're releasing new series content on the classic DVDs. For example, Lost in the Dark Dimension looks at the Doctor Forever. Lost in the Dark Dimension looks at the show's revival, I think it was. So I'm not sure why they decided to put that on a classic DVD. It might have just been because a lot of the Doctor Forever special features were put onto classic DVDs, so I can see why they might have done that. But yeah, so at number 2 is Inferno. Oh, this video seems to be going on forever, because I'm trying not to rush it. So at number 1 we have Evil of the Daleks. Not much to say about the story apart from the fact it's fantastic. Why I love this story so much. Because I've always been, rambling on about it quite a lot in some videos. I just loved it. I was listening to it the other day for the 100th time, and I just love it still. It for me just never gets old. I prefer it to Power of the Daleks as well. Power of the Daleks is in my top 10, but I just couldn't put it somewhere because I just preferred the other stories. But that does get an honourable mention, and it's sort of the War Doctor of this list. So if I had to put it somewhere, it'd probably be at 1.5. So yeah, Power of the Daleks is the War Doctor at this list, and he would be at 1, and that story would be at 1.5. Because I just can't decide where it will go. It's just one of those stories, but I love the Dalek Emperor in the story. Episodes 6 and 7 are very, very, very good. It leads straight after the Faceless Ones, which is another fantastic story. And it's sort of like another War Doctor story, really. I can't really decide where to put it. Because a lot of Patrick Troughton's stories are some of the best Doctor Who stories ever, and I think this is certainly, in my opinion, the best Doctor Who story of all time. I can listen to this story in one go because it's 7 parts, so it's, I think in some people's eyes, a bit of a drag, a bit of a stretch, but I really, really love this story. It's just fantastic. It's Deborah Watling's first story. Another reason why I like it. She's brilliant. Fraser Hines is fantastic. The interaction between Jamie and Kemmel, who's a big muscly bloke, is just wonderful. Patrick Troughton is fantastic, and the Daleks themselves are brilliant. And this is my favourite David Whittaker story. So I think that pretty much concludes my top 10 list. I think for some of you it might have been pretty obvious what number 1 was, because, well, it's always been Evil of the Daleks. So here they are. Here's the top 10 list of my favourite classic Doctor Who stories, and that has been the end of my second part of my 300 video celebrations trilogy. So, thank you for watching this. Please tell me your top 10 classic Doctor Who stories, and feel free to create your own video. I'll be interested to see your opinions and thoughts on each classic Doctor Who story you choose for your top 10. So, next time I'll be looking at my top 10 favourite new series stories, which should be interesting. And so, I shall see you then, and take care, and goodbye.